On May 22, 2020, the world watched in shock as an Airbus A320, operating as Pakistan International Airlines Flight 8303, crashed into a densely populated neighborhood in Karachi. This devastating incident claimed the lives of 97 passengers and crew, leaving only 2 survivors. What caused this catastrophic crash? Was it pilot error, mechanical failure, or something else entirely? Today, we're delving deep into the final moments of Flight 8303 to uncover the truth about one of Pakistan's deadliest aviation disasters. The day began like any other. Flight 8303 was a domestic flight traveling from Lahore to Karachi, a route commonly flown by thousands of passengers each week. The Airbus A320 was a reliable aircraft with an experienced crew on board. Captain Sajjad Gul and his first officer were highly trained, boasting years of experience. The flight took off smoothly and maintained a normal cruising altitude. Communication with air traffic control was routine, and the weather over Karachi was clear, with no signs of turbulence or storms. Everything seemed to be going as planned until the aircraft approached Jinnah International Airport for landing. This is where things began to go wrong. As the aircraft descended toward the runway, the pilots received a warning from the air traffic control tower. They were flying too high and too fast for a safe landing. Despite the warning, the crew decided to proceed with the approach, attempting to bring the aircraft down to the runway. But something critical happened during this phase. According to the investigation, the landing gear was not deployed during this first landing attempt. This meant that the aircraft touched down on its engines instead of its wheels, a disastrous move. The impact caused severe damage to both engines, sparking a series of alarms and leaving the aircraft in a precarious situation. Realizing their mistake, the pilots aborted the landing and attempted a go-around, pulling the aircraft back into the sky for a second approach. But by this point, the damage had already been done. The engines, severely compromised by the initial landing attempt, lost power shortly after takeoff. The aircraft was now essentially gliding, with no thrust to keep it airborne. Inside the cockpit, chaos unfolded as alarms blared and the pilots struggled to regain control. They communicated with air traffic control, declaring an emergency and stating that both engines had failed. The controller cleared them for an emergency landing, but the aircraft never made it back to the runway. As Flight 8303 descended uncontrollably, it crashed into a crowded residential area near the airport, destroying several homes and cars on impact. The scene was one of utter devastation, with wreckage strewn across the neighborhood and thick black smoke rising into the sky. Out of the 99 people on board, only 2 survived, a miraculous outcome considering the severity of the crash. Tragically, 1 resident on the ground also lost their life in the incident. The survivors' accounts painted a harrowing picture of the final moments, describing the panic and confusion as the aircraft plunged toward the ground. The investigation into the crash revealed a series of alarming findings. The initial report highlighted human error as a major contributing factor. The pilots were found to have been distracted during critical phases of the flight, reportedly discussing topics unrelated to their duties. This lack of focus may have contributed to their decision to attempt a landing without deploying the landing gear. Another critical factor was the failure of the crew to follow standard operating procedures. The warnings from air traffic control about their altitude and speed were ignored, and the decision to proceed with the landing proved catastrophic. Investigators also noted that the pilots did not adequately respond to the multiple alarms in the cockpit, further compounding the situation. While the investigation placed significant blame on the crew, it also highlighted systemic issues within Pakistan International Airlines and the broader aviation industry. Concerns about training standards, oversight, and safety protocols were raised, prompting calls for reform. In the wake of the crash, PIA faced intense scrutiny. The airline grounded several pilots after an audit revealed discrepancies in their credentials, further undermining public trust in the carrier. The crash of Flight 8303 became a turning point, sparking demands for greater transparency and accountability in Pakistan's aviation sector. But beyond the technical findings and systemic failures, this story is also one of immense human tragedy. Families lost loved ones in an instant, and the residents of the neighborhood where the plane crashed were left to rebuild their lives in the aftermath. The images of destroyed homes, charred wreckage, and grieving families remain etched in the collective memory of a nation. The legacy of Flight 8303 serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, discipline, and adherence to safety protocols in aviation. While flying remains one of the safest modes of transportation, incidents like this highlight the devastating consequences of even small errors. As we conclude this story, we are left with questions that linger. Could this disaster have been prevented if the crew had acted differently? Are systemic reforms enough to ensure such tragedies never happen again? And how do we balance the human element of aviation with the increasing reliance on technology? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Could the actions of the pilots or the airline have saved Flight 8303? And what lessons can we learn to make aviation safer for everyone? Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay informed, and join us next time as we continue to explore the stories that define the skies.